above a certain threshold in order to lie in the habit zone. For example, Google is used many times in a day, but it adds very less value to your life. Whereas Amazon is used very less frequently. You use Amazon in weeks or months maybe, but the value it adds to your life is quite high. So these products are able to uh, build habits. So they lie in the habit zone. The hook model comprises of 4 steps. The first one is trigger, uh, what the product is addressing, the action which user has to make, and the reward user gets for completing the action. And also users invest time, money, or small efforts in order to make product more interesting for them. And then the cycle again continues, and a user is hooked or basically forms a habit.
So the first step of the hooked cycle is trigger. New habits need a foundation upon which to build. Triggers provide the basis for sustained behavior change. A trigger is the actuator of behavior. It comes in two types, external and internal. Next. External trigger, what gets the user to the product, and internal trigger, what does the user really want. Next. External triggers. Habit forming technologies start changing behavior by first cueing users with a call to action. External triggers are embedded with information which tells the user what to do next. A external trigger communicates the next action the user should take. Often, the desired action is made explicitly clear. An external trigger online may take the form of a prominent button. Types of external triggers. There are basically 4 types of external triggers. First, paid triggers. Example, advertising, search engines, marketing, and other paid channels. Effective but costly ways to keep users coming back. Habit forming companies tend not to rely on paid triggers for very long, if at all, because paying for re engagement is unsustainable for most business models. Companies generally use paid triggers to acquire new users and then leverage other triggers to bring them back. Second is earned triggers. They are free in that they cannot be bought directly but often require investment in the form of time spent on public and media relations. Example, favorable press mentions, featured app store placements, viral videos, etc. Relationship triggers. One person telling others about a product or service can be highly effective external trigger for action. Proper use of relationship triggers requires building an engaged user base that is enthusiastic about sharing the benefits of the product with others. Fourth is own trigger. Own triggers consume a piece of real estate in the user's environment. They consistently show up in daily life, and it is ultimately up to the user to opt in to allow these triggers to appear. Example, app icon, email newsletter, app notification, etc. As you can see this Coca-Cola vending machine in front of you. The thirsty text on the vending machine along with the image triggers the user to buy the product and ultimately acquire them as their customer. Next. Internal triggers. When a product becomes tightly coupled with a thought, an emotion, or pre-existing routine, it leverages an internal trigger. You can't see, touch, or hear an internal trigger. Internal triggers manifest automatically in your mind. Connecting internal triggers with a product is the brass ring of customer technology. Emotions, particularly negative ones, are powerful internal triggers and greatly influence our daily routines. Positive emotions can also serve as internal triggers and may even be triggered by a need to satisfy something that is bothering us. The desire to be entertained can be thought of as the need to satiate boredom. A need to share good news can also be thought of as an attempt to find and maintain social connections. Feelings of boredom, loneliness, frustration, confusion, and indecisiveness often instigate a slight pain or irritation and prompt an almost instantaneous and often mindless action to quell the negative sensation. Next.
The second step in the hook model is action. Uh, it needs any successful habit forming products need user to take actions, right? Be it ordering food on Swiggy or posting an photograph on Instagram, right? uh, According to BJ Fogg behavior model, any behavior is dependent upon 3 key factors: the motivation to pursue that behavior, the ability to complete that action or task, and the trigger which instigates or acts as a cue to start that behavior, right? In the previous section, Lakshya has already talked about the trigger. I'll be focusing more upon the motivation and ability. Motivation is basically the level of desire to take that action or energy for action. Humans generally tend to seek pleasure and avoid pain, seek hope and avoid fear, seek social acceptance and avoid rejection. Let's take the example of Swiggy. Swiggy generally provides a service so that user can take the pleasure of eating his favorite food at the at his own home and avoid the pain of going out to eat and bringing food for somewhere else. Also, Instagram allows and helps user to find social acceptance via the likes and avoids rejection by not giving the option to dislike an image. Also, ability. Ability can be called as the capacity to do a particular behavior or take an action. The easier it is, the better it is. For example, Amazon has recently, not recently, but has a feature of one tap pay or one click pay, one click buy. You just tap on the button of the product you like, and boom, it gets delivered to you. The amount is uh, deducted from your pay balance directly. Any technology or product that significantly reduces the steps to complete the task or the effort to complete a task will enjoy higher adoption rate with respect to its competitors.
So the third step of the hook cycle is variable reward. To keep users engaged, products need to deliver on their promises. Your reward users by solving a problem, reinforcing their motivation for the action taken in the previous phase. There is a part of the brain, the nucleus accumbens, that is the pleasure center of the brain. Things that feel good activate this particular neural region. We act not because of the sensation we receive from the reward, but the need to elevate the craving for that reward. Next. There are there are basically three types of variable rewards. First, rewards of the tribe. We are species that depends on one another. Rewards of the tribes are driven by our conductedness with other people. Our brains are adapted to seek rewards that make us feel accepted, attractive, important, and included. Many institutions and industries are built around the need for social reinforcement. Sites that leverage tribal rewards benefit from social learning theory. People who observe someone being rewarded for a particular behavior are more likely to alter their own beliefs and subsequent actions. Second is rewards of the hunt. The need to acquire physical objects such as food or other supplies that aid our survival is the part of our brain's operating system. Where we once hunted for food, today we hunt for other stuff like information. Third, rewards of the self, fueled by intrinsic motivation. People desire, among other things, to gain a sense of competency. We are driven to conquer obstacles, even if just for the satisfaction of doing so. Next, you must all be aware about Instagram. I mean, you all guys have should have been posting photos on Instagram. People post photo on Instagram seeking validation from others. Like they post pictures and they wait for constantly open their phone and check the amount of likes they have reached. This is a perfect example of reward of the tribe. Next.
The next step is the investment phase. Products and services generally want people to invest a bit of effort or money into the product so that they can make more money out of it. Humans generally irrationally value their own efforts. Uh, the more users invest time and effort into a product or service, the more they value it. For example, IKEA. It's the world's largest furniture retailer. They sell affordable, ready to assemble furniture households. Uh, it makes the user assemble their furniture by themselves, making it more valuable for the furniture owner. So they love IKEA products more than any other furniture product they could have got. Also, humans tend to avoid cognitive dissonance. It's basically the psychological pain of two conflicting ideas. Uh, Let's take the example of a chain smoker. A smoker avoids the idea that smoking causes cancer and instead gives rationals about why one should smoke, and just avoids the idea of smoking causing cancer, because this phenomena is called cognitive dissonance. Rationalization helps us give reasons for our behaviors, even when those reasons might have been designed by someone else.
So you must be thinking, what are we all going to do about this? So next, if you are a product designer, you should ask yourself, what do users really want? What pain is your product relieving? What brings users to your service? What is the simplest action users take in anticipation of reward? And how can you simplify your product to make this action easier? Are users fulfilled by reward? You let wanting more. What bit of work do users invest in your product? Does it load the next trigger and store value to improve the product with use?
If you want to test the legitimacy of your product or service uh, on ethical standards, you can use this manipulation matrix as a simple tool. Any founder, creator, or builder of a product, uh, if the builder thinks that the product or service improves the user's life or actually adds values and himself uses it, then the founder or builder can be called a facilitator. Whereas if the builder does not want to use it himself, and the product does not actually add value to the life, the builder is just a dealer of the product, and the product is highly unethical. So while building a habit forming product, try to be more of a facilitator and less of a dealer. Um, at the end, to conclude, it's nice to build habit forming product, but make sure it adds value and not it's make sure it's not the addiction and it really adds value to people's life, because human hours are valuable and they should not be wasted. So thank you very much. We are open to questions, if any.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, nice lecture. I wanted to ask ki any product which does not have a feature which enables some sort of a threshold
Yeah.
after which a user can stop operating it, won't it always be something which will not cause any productivity to user after a certain level of usage?
Uh,
So don't you think this model without having a feature which enables a threshold is ethically not correct?
Yeah, that's all. That's what I said in the last part. If the It's nice to build habit forming products, but not at the cost of human hours. Like if you think as a builder of a product, it adds value to the user's life, then you should go on to build a high frequency product. But if you think you are correct. It's unethical to build less utility and high frequency product.
Also, I would like to add a point to that. The companies looking for such business models didn't create it for evilish purpose. Rather, they created just for the sake of increasing their revenue. But it turned out to be evil. So, like, we can't just blame it as unethical or anything evilish.
Okay, thank you. Makes sense.
Are there any other questions? I think there are no other questions. So thank you all of you for joining. And you can always post any doubts if you have on chat.sdslabs.co. Thank you for joining again.